Chris Eli, Wellsite.
Chris Eli with Wellsite. Well, let's start off first of all by letting people know what Wellsite is, what it is you guys do.
Wellsite's a e-commerce platform and social media platform for oil and gas. We empower oil field service companies to work along with the oil field community to connect and empower those to work together more efficiently.
How long have you guys been around in business? I mean, the internet, of course, being in the media, I'm very familiar with the paradigm shift that the media had to go through when the internet came around. And so just how exactly did you guys, just talk about the genesis, I guess, and through the course of the genesis, you'll probably mention when you guys started. So just kind of talk a litlittle bit about your history and genesis of the company.
Sure. So I've been in the industry for 23 years. I'm finance educated, but probably more of an engineer by trade. I've been in the oil field services industry my entire career, mainly in directional drilling. I had a short stint as a fluids engineer for Bayreuth early in my career, but got into directional drilling, stayed in that sector for the remaining of my career till 2015, where I decided that there were some opportunities with the downturn to do things a little different this time, since this downturn was different than others, and saw an opportunity to break out on my own and start my own company. And in that process, I met my co-founder of Wellsite, Ken Hartman. He had spun up Wellsite after leaving Baker Hughes after 16 years, and Ken was instrumental in bringing remote services and elevating remote services, the whole platform of e-ticketing and e-commerce to Baker Hughes. And he's a long-time IT geek, and I'm somewhat of a novice IT geek, and we just really hit it off real well, and began Wellsite, and our purpose of starting Wellsite was to empower smaller independent oil field service companies through innovative technologies, kind of bringing the technologies that were mainly historically accessible only to the larger, bigger multinational oil field service companies, bring that technology to the boots on the ground of the mom and pops and the smaller activities, because there was a lot of activity with independent oil field service companies and a lot of value there for oil field producers and drillers that probably don't see it because of entrenchment. So as fast as technology is evolving, as fast as equipment is changing, we felt like we would come up with an idea that we didn't see in the market, and took an opportunity to create wellsite.com. And we believe in our brand. Our brand is strong. We have a good following. We have somewhere around 400,000 connections on the platform, and we're in every country that drills for oil and gas. We have representation there, and we have a large network and community of sales as a service, independent sales contractors that go out and talk with customers every day, and they're connected to oil field service providers that can't normally afford a sales presence in certain basins. So for a small fee, those oil field service companies can connect their equipment and services to those sales agents. So that was the first. We established that in 2015. That was Wellsite Direct, and it's still going strong today. And that's really a big part of what we do. We also, to mention other things, we're really an AI company at heart. We have an artificial intelligence product called Petrobot, and that product connects people to oil field services through natural language processing. We use smart speakers like the Amazon Echo devices and Google Home devices to connect systems and data in both private and public to users so that they can order things like forklifts, drilling tools, rope, PPE equipment, water, fuel, anything they need, they can order through this system, and it's really innovative, and it's changing the industry, and we're getting that out, and people are starting to really adopt that at rapid pace, because the ability for AI to create forms, it can revise a form, it can delete a form, and that's a really strong, and it's an efficiency that oilfield's never seen before. So for you to get immediate access to your data and systems and get answers through just talking to your systems is something that we know that that's the new UI for the oilfield is going to be AI. So we're really proud of that product, and we're excited about the future of that.
Boy, I got about half a dozen notes written down here, so I'm going to just kind of go through them one at a time here. First off, social media. I just want to be clear here on this to make sure I'm understanding what it is that WellSite is. Now, would you be essentially a niche form of like a Facebook, Twitter, a LinkedIn, or are you kind of something separate than that? Do you understand that question? It seems to me like you guys are kind of like your own. You're trying to start like a Facebook or Twitter platform specifically for oil and gas people. Did I hear that right, or am I missing something?
That's correct. It's kind of a blend between LinkedIn and Twitter. It really gives people the ability to get to an oilfield directory, to get to well records. It's got a marketplace for oilfield services and equipment. It also has job listings, apps, industry-specific apps. It has a really powerful feature called Workspaces, which literally can be anything. It can be a project, a group, or a simple topic of knowledge share that can be private for individuals to share private data back and forth within their organization, or it could be public to share best practices or information about your company, and as well as the activity feed where we have news articles, all for the oil and gas community, not for any other communities other than oil and gas. So not a lot of noise on the news feed, and a very specific and niche to oil and gas.
And then the other thing I wrote down, small business platform. A lot of what you said is a lot of what we're doing as well, in terms of trying to really be a platform for these smaller companies. And the reason that we have, the rationale that we have is, in fact, my second story I ever did on the shale revolution 7 years ago was that this is not a oil boom, it's a technology boom. Yet oil's driving it, but at the end of the day, it's really a technology boom that's making a lot of this extra economy happen. And when I see what you've done, you've set up the pieces for what I've been arguing to these companies all day long, which is we work in the oil and gas industry. It's not like a lot of these guys are going to the store and picking out an impulse buy. They take meetings, they take time, they take back and forth, they take analyzation to do things. So if you're a smaller company, you might have to wait a year before you get a job, or a job that is going to put you kind of in the positive cash flow. That's just how it works, because you're talking about big dollars and only a certain amount of rigs and only a certain amount of science projects going on, et cetera, et cetera. So what we've tried to do is we actually got rid of advertising first of the year. We totally reinvented our business plan because technology warranted it. We mentioned earlier off the air that, or I think I did in the beginning of this interview, how the internet changed the media world. Well, as I was interviewing the Harold Hams and the James Volkers and the John Gibsons of the world, the CEOs of oil companies and gas companies, they're telling me how they're changing their business plan because of the hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling and just all-around technology. So when one of the kings of the economy, which is oil and gas, I mean, you try to do something without oil and gas, it ain't going to work in this economy. So when one of the kings of the economy has to go through a business model change, that's just going to trickle and ripple down through. So this year we decided to go away from the traditional advertising and really focus on more of a streamlined approach. And as I'm looking at your pricing, I see you guys are doing the same thing, which is how can we figure out a platform that is going to get people the activity and the connections they need to get some business, rather than going back and trying to hit them up for a couple grand here, a couple grand there to tell them how they can increase their business, yada, yada. Now, is that what you guys, what was your rationale behind that? Because what we tried to do is, again, come up with a very inexpensive, streamlined, efficient way for someone to say, you know what, we're done after, we got a year worth of communications, marketing, et cetera, done in one shot. And maybe if we get some business, we'll revisit it. But right now, we got to worry about getting business and our name out there, et cetera. Did you guys talk about that? Did you guys have a different strategy? Talk to me a little bit about a reaction to what I just said.
So for the smaller oil field service company to get I guess what you're talking about is getting into the bigger companies, getting their name out there, getting their product or service seen by larger independent oil drillers, right?
The more established ones that have got, they got a good operation going and that sort of thing. They got stability and because as well as I do, there's a number of them, but those are the ones that primarily are doing a lot of the oil and gas activity.
Right, and what we noticed is, for instance, we noticed that there's a lot of really good technology out there that's not owned by the larger entrenched multinational service companies, and the Continentals and the Anadarkos and these guys, they don't have necessarily the capacity to keep up with how fast things and rapid change. And what we wanted to do is create a platform where the small, more innovative companies, more nimble and agile companies could reach those operators with their technology by means of digital connection. So, for instance, why not create a marketplace built on blockchain technology where smart contracts can be enabled to where a supply chain for a larger independent oil producer can go in and connect with a smaller independent that matches certain criteria that they determine to be essential for creating a partnership and using a product or a service. So that's where we started connecting with smaller independent oil field service companies that were a little bit innovative, had great products, and wanted to get those out to the market, but couldn't necessarily afford this type of sales force they needed to connect to those clients. And there's really a bigger gap in the industry than what most people say. The sales is still largely driven by relationships. So we still see a lot of our sales that come through the platform are relationship driven. We are seeing a change of that slightly to more digital connection, just purely supply chain and procurement driven. And that's where we want to blend the ability to blend with both multi-product line selling and representation, and getting getting access to better, maybe the entrenched multinational service companies may not be necessarily telling the operators that there are better and more efficient technologies out there, but they're just because they don't own them. So we want to kind of open the marketplace up, open the activity up for all players, and we believe that there's a traditional model out there that just can't be. I don't believe that can be sustainable anymore, and that's if I have widget A, I have a widget A salesman. If I have widget B, then I have a widget B salesman. That's traditional oil field. So you have drill bit salesman, drill pipe salesman, drilling rig salesman, surface equipment salesman. It goes on and on. Wellheads and flanges and valves and forklifts, and everybody's got their own salesman. And what we're seeing in the oil field for the last 2 years is that we have suppliers coming to us in the hundreds that are saying, guys, we have products. We can't afford to sell them. We can't afford not to sell them. I can't afford to pay a salesman $7,500 a month for 6 months and lose 50, 60 grand in order to see. That's just too big of a risk for my company. Yeah. I need a different way to connect to a sale that I can afford that's less risk. So we developed Wellsite Direct, and in order to enhance the Wellsite Direct platform, we created Petrobot to connect these oil field products and services to sales individuals with a digital assistant, being the Petrobot product, in a way that's so innovative and so easy that you can just text it to order a bid, and you can just talk to an Alexa Echo device, for instance, and order fuel and water and different services. Even request cleaning services. I mean it's really that easy, and that's an innovation that scares a lot of people, and it also empowers a lot of service companies that are struggling with efficiency gains.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Chris. I mean, I feel like you're pitching my company as well. I mean, we're just because you've got the same observations that we've had, which is you can't pay somebody $7,500 a month because it's gonna catch up with you. We used to call it back in the internet 2009 days in the media, who can hemorrhage the least for the longest, because everybody was losing money. I mean, whether it was the LA Times or the Chicago Tribune or little old Jason Spiessa's media company, we were all losing money. And when now that I see this with the oil and gas, it really prepared me for what you are talking about. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like our platform, we don't go back and hit people up for $2,000-$3,000 to get some SEO code words and maybe do something more in the marketing and yada yada type thing, because that's the traditional way. Like I said, we got to get these guys some business, and we got to educate, because when you have technology, you got to educate. And when you got to educate, that takes time, that takes relationships, that takes trust. And that is not developed overnight, especially not in the oil and gas industry, when you have 70% of the industry retiring. And when they're retiring, they want to make darn sure that the people who they're handing the baton off to have an understanding and respect for the industry that was built. They have an understanding and respect for the land, and they have an understanding and respect for the natural resources that are involved with this, and even the overall economy. And when I say energy economy, I'm talking about the oil companies all the way down to the local cafe owner. Because if you work in the oil and gas industry, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say oil company to the cafe owner, because they all make the oil and gas and the energy operate. What do you make? And by the way, I've only got a couple minutes, and I've got to run to a 10 o'clock, but I just wanted to ask you very quickly about the technology part of it. You really when I looked at your website, you guys have set up a blockchain. Did you try to be a blockchain, or did you backdoor into it? Because at the end of the day, you've got the ground floor foundation built for blockchain. You mentioned it earlier in the interview. That's why I wanted to come back for it. But yeah, I mean, what I'm looking at right now, man, you've basically got the roots already set up. Do you guys do blockchain?
Yes. So that's what we're doing today. We're taking the suppliers that we have today that are transacting, and we're taking the clients that are the big clients that are more adoptive of the technology, and we're integrating those into the blockchain. So really, WellSite is really going to be the on-ramp for companies to enter the blockchain in oil and gas. We already have the development teams. We have the development already there. We can scale it. We have everything in place to be the central location for everyone to enter the blockchain type, the blockchain platform and technology. And even when companies that they don't know what blockchain is. I mean, the oil and gas is largely made up of, it's an education process. It's people that don't understand the technology. Historically, the industry has invested in gadgets or something shiny, that a completion tool or an equipment that advances a certain process like fracking or completions or drilling, and really we haven't invested the type of money that it needs to innovate the back office technology that exists today. The good thing is that for oil and gas producers and also oil field service companies is the technology with open source technology. Really, in the last 5 years, it's really reduced the cost of and the barrier for entry into a more advanced system and technology. So now we're able to create technology and bring smaller companies to the blockchain to make them more efficient. So that it's really WellSite is just ideally positioned to enable this transformation in oil and gas.
All right, let's get your information out there real quick, and we'll have to circle back around because you kind of know what you're talking about, and it's good information here for everybody. So how can people get in touch with you and give us some of that info?
So they can reach us at sales@WellSite. And then, you can always reach me at chris@wellsite.com. You can call our main numbers 512-400-0020. But the best way to reach us is just by email. We respond very quickly. So just reach out.